remember lying in that sterile hospital bed, hooked to machines, my body aching and weak. I thought she'd be there for me, the woman I love, the one who promised she'd stay through sickness and health. But instead, I got a text from a friend that shattered everything. I saw her with someone else. I'm so sorry. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was someone who looked like her. But then, late one night, I checked her social media. There it was, a photo she'd been tagged in, her hand entwined with his. No shame, no guilt. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or demand answers. Something inside me just broke. The day I was discharged, she didn't even bother to pick me up. I took a taxi home, walked into our apartment, and quietly packed my things. She was out, probably with him. I left the keys on the counter and walked out without leaving a note, without calling her, without even saying goodbye. She didn't deserve my pain or my words. The smell of antiseptic clung to my skin as I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. I was exhausted, sore, but alive, and I thought that was enough. I thought she'd be there, holding my hand, whispering that everything would be okay. Instead, I got a message from James, my best friend. Man, I hate to tell you this, but I saw her tonight with someone else. At first, I couldn't process it. The painkillers blurred my thoughts. I stared at the screen, waiting for the words to rearrange into something less cruel. But they didn't. I called her. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. Then I checked her social media, something I hadn't done in weeks. My blood ran cold when I saw the photo. She wasn't at home, waiting for me to heal. She was out, smiling in a bar, her hand laced with another man's. The nurse came in to check my vitals, but I barely noticed. My chest was tight, not from the stitches or the pain. I spent the rest of the night in silence. No tears, no anger, just a numbness that filled every corner of my body. By morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream or beg her to explain. What good would that do? She'd already made her choice. When the doctor cleared me for discharge, I told them I'd arrange my own ride. I didn't even text her. What was the point? The taxi ride home felt like an out-of-body experience. I watched the world blur by outside the window, wondering how the life it built could crumble so fast. When I stepped inside our apartment, her perfume lingered in the air. The sight of our photos, me and her laughing, kissing, dreaming, hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat down for a moment, looking around, and knew I couldn't stay. I packed without thinking, moving like a ghost through the apartment. T-shirts, jeans, my shaving kit, a few books. I didn't care about the rest. Every item I touched felt heavier with memory. Her favorite mug, the throw blanket we fought over on movie nights, the framed photo from our last vacation. I left them all behind. By the time I zipped my suitcase, my chest felt both heavy and strangely light. I left the keys on the kitchen counter, next to a note I couldn't bring myself to write. I stood at the door for a long moment. No words, no last look around. I just turned the handle and walked out. I didn't tell her I was leaving. She didn't deserve that. The elevator ride down from our apartment felt like an eternity. Each floor that ticked past reminded me that I was leaving behind a life I'd once fought to build. I wasn't sure if I was running away or saving myself, maybe both. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over a world that no longer felt familiar. I called a cab and gave the driver the name of a hotel across town, one I'd never stayed at. When I checked into the hotel, the receptionist smiled politely and handed me a key card. It felt surreal. Here I was, a man who had just been in a hospital bed days ago, now trying to start over from scratch without a single goodbye. That night, I sat on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. My chest hurt, but not from the stitches. It was the kind of ache you can't fix with medicine. I thought about the moment I found out the text from James, the photo of her smiling with him. It replayed like a cruel movie reel. For the first time, I let myself cry. The next morning, I grabbed a notebook from the hotel's front desk and began writing. Not to her, but to myself. I wrote about our first date, how nervous I was when she smiled at me across the table. I wrote about the nights we stayed up until dawn, talking about our dreams. And I wrote about the betrayal, about how it felt to realize that while I was fighting to get better in a hospital bed, she was in someone else's arms. It hurt, but the words came pouring out, like poison leaving my body. I thought about calling James, thanking him for telling me the truth, but I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. Instead, I took a long shower, washed the hospital smell off me, and put on clean clothes. For the first time in days, I felt a small spark of control. By the end of the week, I checked out of the hotel and boarded a train. I didn't care where it went, as long as it was far from her. I ended up in a quiet coastal town I'd never visited before. It was small, with narrow streets, salty air, and a kind of stillness that made me feel like I could breathe again. I rented a tiny furnished room above a bookstore. The owner, an older man named Carl, handed me the keys with a nod. "Fresh start?" he asked. "Yeah," I said simply. That night, I walked along the shoreline, the cool waves lapping at my feet. I thought about her, about how easily she'd replaced me while I lay helpless in that hospital bed. Swore then that I wouldn't waste my life chasing someone who had already thrown me away. I was going to rebuild for myself and no one else. A coastal town was calm, but my mind wasn't. Every quiet moment brought memories of her crashing in like waves during a storm. I remembered the day we moved in together, how she danced barefoot in our empty apartment, laughing as we unpacked boxes. I remembered the promises we made, whispered late at night, when we swore nothing could come between us. And now, those memories felt poison. To keep my mind from spiraling, I filled my days with small routines. I'd wake up early, grab coffee from the cafe next door, and take a walk by the water. Sometimes I'd sit on the pier for hours, just watching the tide roll in, letting the sound of the ocean drown out her voice in my head. But at night, when the town was quiet and the lights dim, I couldn't escape the thoughts. I wondered if she missed me, if she even cared that it disappeared. The anger and heartbreak mixed into something heavy, almost unbearable. Carl, the bookstore owner, offered me some part-time work organizing shelves and helping with deliveries. It wasn't much, but it gave me purpose. "I like to keep busy," I told him. He nodded knowingly. Busy hands keep a quiet mind. I started to find comfort in the routine, the smell of old books, the soft sound of pages turning, the quiet conversations with strangers who came in 2 bras. Each day felt like stitching a small piece of myself back together. I stopped checking my phone as much. I didn't want to see her name pop up, didn't want to be dragged back into the mess I left behind. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before she tried to reach me. One evening, as I closed the shop, I saw the notification. A single text from her. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering?" I stared at it, my pulse quickening. It was the first time she'd reached out since I left. Then another came. "I'm sorry. Please, can we talk?" I didn't reply. I couldn't. Just seeing her name on my screen made my chest tighten, my jaw clench. She wanted to talk now, but where was she when I needed her? I put my phone face down on the counter and walked outside, the cool night air helping me breathe. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours. Her name, the name that once made my heart race, now felt like a knife. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? I'm sorry. Please, can we talk?" Each message was like a whisper of the life we had, but all I could hear beneath the words was betrayal. I sat on the bed in my tiny room, the dim light of the lamp casting shadows on the walls. My hands itched to type something back, to demand why, to ask if any of our love had been real. But what good would it do? The truth was, I didn't want her excuses. I didn't want to hear her voice tell me that it was a mistake or that it didn't mean anything. People don't accidentally betray someone who's fighting for their life in a hospital bed. I powered off my phone and tossed it onto the desk. I refused to let her voice crawl back into my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face laughing with him, holding his hand. I replayed our last conversation before the hospital. She kissed me on the forehead and told me, "Don't worry, they'll be here when you get out." Those words now felt like poison. I turned over in bed, my chest tightening. Anger bubbled inside me, but so did grief. How could someone who swore they loved me turn so quickly? I replayed our last conversation before the hospital. She kissed me on the forehead and told me, "Don't worry, they'll be here when you get out." Those words now felt like poison. I turned over in bed, my chest tightening. Anger bubbled inside me, but so did grief. How could someone who swore they loved me turn so quickly? When dawn broke, I decided I wouldn't waste another day thinking about her. I got dressed, went downstairs, and told Carl I'd worked extra hours at the bookstore. "Good," he said, handing me a box of books. "Keep your mind busy, son." Days turned into a routine. I woke up early, grabbed coffee, and worked at the bookstore. Each task, sorting titles, stacking shelves, felt like a quiet form of therapy. One afternoon, a young boy came in with his mom, looking for a book about space. I knelt to help him pick one out, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled without forcing it. Later, as I locked up, I realized something important. The world hadn't stopped because my heart was broken. Life was still happening, and I had the power to rebuild mine. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "She doesn't get to control my story anymore. I do." It had been weeks since I left, and each day I felt a little less like the broken man who walked out of that apartment. My body was healing, but so was my mind. One morning, while cleaning a corner of the bookstore, I found an old guitar leaning against a dusty wall. Carl chuckled when he saw me staring at it. "Belonged to my son. Haven't heard it played in years." "You play?" I hadn't touched a guitar in almost 2 years. Back when we first started dating, I used to write songs for her. But as time went on, I gave up little pieces of myself to make her happy. Music was one of them. That night, I sat in my small room with the guitar on my lap. My fingers were clumsy at first, but as I played an old melody, something inside me woke up. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about me, the person I used to be before the lies and betrayal. One evening, I pulled out my notebook and wrote a letter I'd never send. You broke me while I was at my weakest, but you didn't destroy me. The words poured out faster than I could write them. I wrote about the hospital bed, about the texts I saw, about how I walked out without saying a word because she didn't deserve my voice. When I finished, I read the letter aloud, and something inside me shifted. It felt like I had let go of a weight I'd been carrying. I tore the letter out of the notebook and burned it in a small tin outside. Watching the flames turn my anger to ash felt like freedom. The next day, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: go for a long walk without a destination. I followed the winding streets, letting the salty breeze from the ocean hit my face. Near the pier, a street musician played an upbeat tune. I stopped, smiled, and tapped my foot. It felt strange but good, like I was waking up from a long sleep. On my way back, I bought a simple journal from a local shop. I decided I'd fill it not with pain, but with the things I wanted for my future. That night, I wrote, Day 1, a new chapter begins. One morning, while restocking a shelf at the bookstore, I heard a soft voice behind me. Do you have anything by Steinbeck? I turned to see a young woman with kind eyes and windswept hair. She smiled politely, holding a coffee cup. Yeah, follow me, I said, leading her to the classics section. Her name was Sarah. She had just moved to town to work remotely, and she said the bookstore was her favorite quiet spot. We chatted as I helped her pick out a book, and for the first time in a long time, the conversation didn't feel heavy. After she left, Carl smirked. Making friends, huh? I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't deny it felt good. Not romantic, I wasn't ready for that, but good to have a real conversation with someone who didn't know my past, who saw me as I was now. Later that week, I brought the guitar downstairs to the bookstore. During slow hours, Carl encouraged me to play softly in the corner. People love live music, he said. I was nervous at first, but as I strummed and hummed an old tune, a few customers smiled, nodding their heads. Sarah stopped by, listening for a few minutes. You're good, she said. You should keep playing. Her words stayed with me. Music, something I'd buried for so long, was slowly becoming part of me again. That night, I wrote in my journal, I'm starting to feel alive again. Just as I was finding some peace, my phone lit up with her name. I froze. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The thought of hearing her voice, full of excuses and fake regret, made my chest tighten. She left a voicemail. I know you're hurt. Please talk to me. I deleted it without listening to the rest. A week after ignoring her calls, I found a small package waiting for me at the bookstore. It had my name on it, written in her handwriting. Carl handed it to me with a curious look. Old flame? I didn't answer. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a photo of us from 2 years ago, smiling in front of a cabin we rented one winter. There was a note attached. I'm sorry for everything. I miss you. Please just talk to me. I stared at it for a long time. The man in that photo me looked happy, but I barely recognized him now. I folded the picture, placed it back in the box, and shoved it under the counter. That night, I wrote in my journal, I am not the man she broke. I am someone stronger now. Carl noticed my distracted mood. You've got ghosts chasing you, son, he said as we sorted books. Something like that, I admitted. You can't heal if you keep looking back, he said. Trust me, I've been there. Life's too short to live in yesterday's pain. His words hit me hard. Maybe I was still carrying too much of her with me. I hadn't just left her physically. I needed to leave her emotionally too. After work, I took a long walk along the pier, breathing in the salty air. The waves crashed softly, and for the first time, I felt like I was truly moving forward. Over the next few days, I made small changes that felt big. I cooked simple meals in my little kitchen, went for morning jogs, and even joined Carl for coffee after closing. Sarah stopped by again, asking if I'd read the Steinbeck book she'd bought. We talked about literature and music, and I realized I was smiling not out of politeness, but because I wanted to. Each moment of peace felt like a quiet rebellion against the pain she left behind. It was late afternoon when the bell above the bookstore door chimed, and I looked up to see her. She stood there like a ghost from another life, her hair perfectly styled, wearing that same familiar perfume. For a moment, I felt my chest tighten, a mix of anger, pain, and something I couldn't name. Hi, she said softly, almost like a whisper. I froze. Part of me wanted to throw her out, The other part wanted to ask why. But I said nothing. I had to find you, she continued. I didn't know where you went. You just vanished. I turned away, stacking books on a nearby shelf. There's nothing left to say. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Please, just let me explain. I turned, finally meeting her eyes. Explain how you cheated while I was in a hospital bed. Explain how you replaced me without hesitation. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The silence said more than any excuse could. Leave, I said coldly. I'm not that man anymore. You don't get to break me twice. After she left, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I sat on a stool in the corner of the store, feeling like my past had just clawed its way back into my life. Carl noticed my pale face. Want me to throw her out next time? He asked. I chuckled weakly. I think I handled it. But inside, I was unraveling. Seeing her brought back everything had buried: the hospital bed, the late nights, the broken promises. I walked home that evening, every step heavy. But as I unlocked my door, I realized something important. I hadn't let her in. Not physically, not emotionally. I had stood my ground. That night, I wrote in my journal, today I chose me. The next day, Sarah stopped by the store. You look tired, she said gently. Rough night, I admitted. She offered a smile. Want to grab coffee after your shift? Fresh air might help. I hesitated but agreed. That evening, we sat outside a small cafe, sipping lattes while the sun dipped into the horizon. We talked about books, music, and life. Not once did I think about her. It felt like a small victory. When I walked home, I realized that my future wasn't defined by the people who broke me. It was shaped by the ones who helped me stand again. A few days later, I received a letter from her. No name on the envelope, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at it for a long time before finally tearing it open. I know I hurt you. I made mistakes I'll regret for the rest of my life. I just want a chance to make it right. I folded the letter neatly and tossed it into the trash. I didn't need to read the rest. I didn't need her apologies anymore. After work, I walked along the pier and let the cool breeze clear my head. For so long, I thought I needed answers: why she cheated, why she gave up on me. But standing there, watching the waves crash, I realized none of it mattered anymore. I'd survived without her. I found my own strength. That was enough. Sarah came by the bookstore again, holding a coffee for me. You look like you could use this, she said with a grin. We spent the morning talking about music and art. She had a way of listening, really listening, that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. Carl winked at me when she left. She's good for you, he said. Maybe, I replied, smiling for real this time. That night, I picked up the guitar and played a new melody. It wasn't about pain or heartbreak. It was about hope. By the end of the week, I realized I hadn't thought about her once. Not the betrayal, not the pain. I was too busy living. I started volunteering at the local community center, teaching kids a few basic guitar chords. Their laughter and curiosity made me feel alive again. In the evenings, I'd sit on my porch, notebook in hand, writing songs that weren't about loss, but about the beauty of moving forward. For the first time, I wasn't running from my past. I was walking confidently toward my future. Sarah invited me to a local art fair that Saturday. It had been a long time since I'd done anything like that, just walking through crowded streets, enjoying music and art. At first, I hesitated. Part of me still felt like I didn't deserve happiness, like I was stuck in the shadow of what happened. But when I saw Sarah waiting for me by the pier, waving with a warm smile, I felt something shift. We spent the afternoon wandering between stalls, tasting food from local vendors, and laughing at a man who tried and failed to juggle flaming torches. For the first time, I realized how much I'd missed moments like this, simple, real moments that had nothing to do with the pain I left behind. As we parted ways that evening, Sarah said, "You're starting to smile more." "Am I?" I asked. "Yeah," she said with a grin. "It looks good on you." That night, I picked up my guitar and started writing. I didn't even think, the words just flowed, raw and real. It wasn't a song about her, or about betrayal. It was about finding myself again. The lyrics spoke of broken roads that led to better places, of storms that cleared skies for something new. When I played it for Carl the next day, his eyes lit up. "You've got something there, kid. That's from the heart." I realized then that music, which I'd once abandoned, was becoming my lifeline, my way of telling my story without letting the pain control me. The final step of healing came unexpectedly. I found an old photo of us, buried in the back of my suitcase. I stared at it for a long time. We looked happy, but I knew now that some smiles hide secrets. Instead of feeling sadness or anger, I felt nothing, and that was the moment I knew I was free. I tore the photo in half, tossed it into the trash, and whispered goodbye. That evening, I joined Sarah and Carl for dinner. We laughed, shared stories, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a man who had been left behind. I felt like someone who had moved forward. Each morning now felt different. I no longer woke up thinking about her, or about the pain she left behind. I didn't just feel like I was surviving, I was living. I spent mornings helping at the bookstore, afternoons teaching guitar at the community center, and evenings writing music. The little coastal town that once felt like an escape now felt like home. One afternoon, Carl asked, "You ever think about performing again?" Performing? I hadn't played in front of more than a few people since college. He nodded. "Open mic night at the cafe down the road. You've got something worth sharing." The idea made me nervous, but also excited. It had been a long time since I did something just because I loved it. I agreed. The cafe was small and cozy, packed with locals. Sarah sat at a corner table, smiling as I tuned my guitar. My hands were shaking, but I reminded myself this wasn't about her. This was for me. When my name was called, I stepped up to the mic and sat on the stool. I cleared my throat and began to play the song he'd written, the one about healing, about starting over. As I sang, the room went still. I wasn't performing for applause. I was telling my story, and it felt good. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before people clapped. Not politely, genuinely. Sarah stood and smiled. "Told you," she said. Later that night, Sarah and I walked the pier in silence. "Finally," she said, "you looked free up there." "I felt it," I said. She stopped and looked at me. "Do you think you'll ever be ready to let someone in again?" I paused. That question would have scared me a month ago. But now, maybe, I said, if it's the right person. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't afraid of love anymore. I was just no longer willing to settle for anything less than what I deserved. A week after the open mic night, I sat at my desk, my journal open, but I didn't write about her. I didn't write about the betrayal or the pain. Instead, I wrote a letter to myself. You survived the kind of heartbreak that could have broken you beyond repair. You rebuilt your life piece by piece, not because anyone saved you, but because you chose yourself. You are stronger than you know, and you will never lose yourself again. Reading it back felt like a release. For so long, my thoughts had been trapped in a cycle of why did she do this? And what could I have done differently? Now I realized those questions didn't matter. Her choices weren't about me. They were about her own flaws, her own inability to be loyal. That's on her, not me. I tore out the page, folded it neatly, and placed it in my guitar case. It was a reminder that every song I played now came from a place of strength, not sadness. Later that day, Sarah stopped by the bookstore and brought lunch for me and Carl. "Still writing?" she asked with a curious smile. "Yeah," I said, "but this time, it's different. This time, it's for me." That evening, my phone buzzed again. Her name appeared on the screen, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel my heart race with anger or pain. I answered. "Hello." She paused, clearly surprised it picked up. "You're alive. I didn't know where you were." "I'm fine," I said flatly. "Please, can we just talk? I made a mistake, but I still love." I cut her off. "No, you don't. You loved the idea of me being there no matter what. But I'm not that man anymore. You made your choice, and I made mine." She was silent. I could almost hear her guilt over the line. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for," I said, and hung up. It felt like slamming a door shut for the final time. Next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. I realized that closure isn't about getting an apology or hearing someone's reasons. It's about choosing to stop letting their actions control you. I spent the day painting a corner of my tiny room a bright blue. The color of the ocean had grown to love here. I hung up a photo Sarah had taken of me playing guitar at the open mic. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It felt like a symbol of who I was becoming. That night, I played my new song again, but this time, I played it with a smile. Not because I was healed completely, heartbreak leaves scars, but because I knew I was free. 2 weeks later, Sarah invited me to a small local festival. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to open myself up to anything new, even if it was just friendship. But something in her voice when she said, "It'll be fun, trust me," made me say yes. The festival was alive with music, laughter, and food stalls. For the first time in months, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Sarah walked beside me, pointing out quirky vendors, and telling me stories about the town. I caught myself laughing, genuinely laughing, and realized I hadn't done that in a long time. Later, we sat near the stage to watch a local band. She leaned closer and said, "You know, you should be up there. You've got the talent, and you've got something real to say." Her words stirred something in me. I'd always loved music, but it buried that part of myself when I was with her. Maybe because I was too busy trying to keep our relationship from falling apart. When I got home that night, I picked up my guitar and wrote a new song, not about pain, but about rediscovery. It was raw and imperfect, but it was mine. Carl must have heard me practicing because the next morning, he tossed a flyer onto the counter at the bookstore. "There's an open stage at the festival tomorrow night," he said with a grin. "You're going to play." I laughed. "You think I'm ready?" He shrugged. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to be brave." Sarah stopped by later, and when I told her, she smiled. "They'll be there cheering for you. This is your moment." That evening, I stood on my porch, strumming my guitar as the sun dipped below the horizon. I thought about how far I'd come since the hospital bed, from heartbreak and betrayal to this moment, where I was about to share my voice with a crowd. I wasn't nervous about her anymore. She no longer had power over me. This was about reclaiming myself. The night of the performance, my hands shook as I stepped onto the stage. The crowd was small, but I could see Sarah in the front row, clapping and smiling. I took a deep breath and began to play. The song was about healing, about how sometimes the hardest endings lead to the best beginnings. Each lyric felt like a piece of my heart laid bare. Now, I'm building something new piece by piece, note by note. Sarah joined me on the pier, handing me a coffee. "So," she said with a teasing grin, "what's next for the rising star?" I laughed. "Whatever I want. For once, it's my story to write." As I looked out over the ocean, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't defined by what she did to me. I was defined by how I chose to rise from it. And I was just getting started.